Digital fam, happy Sunday. It's your boy Drew. Happy 2021. We're back. The L's, aka Lessons Learned, season 2. We're now kicking off episode 25 with my boy and good friend Swagg Arcelius. But before we start, I just want to say, hope you guys are staying creative and safe at home, sending great energy, and thank you for all the support. If you haven't yet, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to support the YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody. Without further ado, happy Sunday to my guy Swagg Arcelius. What's good?
Man, what is good, bro? I'm maintaining.
Hey.
Trying to stay COVID free.
Hey, that's the name of the game at this point, honestly.
Yeah.
Before we tap into obviously the L's and your journey, I just want to I always like to do a check-in. How are you and the fam? How's everyone?
Everybody's good, man. Unfortunately, we lost my grandma last year. We couldn't really celebrate her life the way we wanted to. We had to do, most of us attended the memorial remotely. But other than that, man, our immediate circle, my wife, kids, brothers, sisters, everybody else is good. So we're thankful for that. And she lived a long life. So we're happy that we had her as long as we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest in paradise to your grandma and to also my great grandma that passed away this year. So, but more importantly, your wife and kids are all healthy. So that's the most important.
Absolutely.
More blessings this year. And, just for the community, the digital community, obviously we know each other. Just for context. So we first met, I think it was 2017, honestly, I think.
Yeah.
We had ramen.
Yeah. What was that, 25th and was that Broadway or something like that?
Yeah, it's like right across the street from the Sony building.
Yeah.
Like Madison Park.
Madison Park, yeah. That's a good ramen.
Yeah, so that was cool. I think it was me, you, and Marcus.
Jonathan.
So Marcus Mims is a songwriter. Yeah. Marcus and Jonathan as well. So really, really dope to like obviously start our relationship there. And then we've obviously worked on a few things on the writing side with Marcus, and then you've spoken to at our event back in 2018 for Art of the Demo. And we've always been a big fan of you, and
thank you.
Everything you've accomplished in your career, and whether it's the artists you work with or just like things that you're working on, we've always been a big supporter. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
So just for the audience, you want to introduce yourself? Your title, just like what people refer you as, and then maybe some of the things you're working on right now.
Absolutely. I'm affectionately known as Swagg. My name is D. Arcelius Harris. I am a Grammy Award-winning producer, songwriter. I'm also a professor of music at New York University and Berklee College of Music. I am a creative artist developer. I'm a CEO of my production development company, Progressive Music Group. I also have an indie incubator label with The Orchard, co with Richard Gottier, called Cross the Line Music. So so I'm just a lover of all things creative and art and music, and dope.
Man, look at that. Hold on, let me repeat that. Grammy Award-winning producer, educator at Berklee, entrepreneur, Progressive Music Group. And then you mentioned you also working on an incubator with The Orchard, Cross
the Line. And I'm a professor at New York University as well.
And a professor. Hold up. I just want to just to recognize those things, because I feel like, you're just a testament to like the evolution of what a producer has become, right? And I think you could be so many things, and not just to like cap yourself into like one bubble.
Absolutely.
But everyone now knows you as this Grammy Award-winning producer, this educator, this entrepreneur. But who was Swagg Arcelius, when they, as a young child, like, growing up, I always more so interested about that journey? You know, like,
Mhm.
you know, that first project that you were interested in, or the first artist, you know, was it like music that your parents played at your crib? Like,
Mhm.
how did you like come into like music as a young child?
Well, I'm from a small town. I guess I started at the beginning. I'm from a small town in Georgia called Manchester, population of about 3,200 when I was there. Um, my father's a pastor. It is eight of us. I am the seventh of
Wow.
eight.
Wow.
So, music played a big part in our home because of church. And, my dad used to tell a story of when he was younger, he really loved music. And when grandma would give him money to go to piano lessons, he would go and blow it off and like go get ice cream or some stuff. And that was his regret in life. So he always prayed, like, if he had kids, that they would be musical. And little did he know that we would end up being the musicians in the church. And so that's where, my initial love and passion just came from watching my older siblings play and sing around the house and in church. So that's how my first introduction to music happened, which is funny because we had
Oh.
a they had we had a little band that we would go to church and
Mm.
perform with the siblings, and my brother started it, and then my dad was like, "Oh, you got to add your sisters to add that flavor." Because he was a fan of like the Caravan, the Claire Ward
Yeah.
singers, and like a lot of the great female vocalists in the '60s and '50s, and Mahalia Jackson and Ruth Brown, and also So he's like, "Oh, you gotta add that flavor." My sisters was like, "Okay, like, we don't really want to do it." So, and then I
I love
begged to be
that.
in the group. So I think I joined when I was like 8.
Wow. Wow. So shout out to your dad for having the vision.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so there was this group that's already created, and you're just like, hey, why am I not part of this group?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, man, I want to get down. The crazy thing about it was I couldn't really sing at the time, and I didn't play an instrument. So they were a little bit older, right? So the
Mhm.
brother right above me is 4 years older than me. So, I'm 8, he's what, 14 or something. My math is off, but yeah. So, but
12.
the other 14.
Yeah, he's 14.
12. Um, so, he was playing drums and singing and stuff like that. So I hadn't really developed anything, but I could move, I could dance at that point in my life.
Mm,
So, I was a little mascot that would turn my mic off. But, I really wanted to be a part of it. I really had a passion for it, and, just wanted to get involved. So that's where it kind of started for me.
that's dope. Well, shout out to your dad and obviously your brothers and sisters. So you join, obviously you join at 8, and you're trying to find your footing, right? You don't
Yeah.
necessarily sing
Mm-mm.
or play an instrument at that time.
Right.
What is it, maybe the first instrument that you start to tap into, or is there like
Well,
um
the first thing I really started tapping into was poetry. So I started to write. I
mm,
fell in love with creative writing at a really young age, and like fell in love with American literature.
mm,
And trying to write poems and stuff. So I remember entering contests, and I won one. And I think when I was like 10 or 11 or something within my age bracket, and it was published in this book. And so I really wanted to get into writing songs and stuff. So I was trying keyboard at first, like piano. We had a little Casio around the house. And man, I was getting the rhythms right, but not the melody. So my brother was like, "Man, maybe you should try drums because you're not hitting the notes, but you're getting the rhythms." So it went from writing poetry, writing songs, trying to write songs to drums. So drums was the first instrument I really locked in on around
wow.
10, 11. Yeah.
Wow. So you started as a creative writer,
Yep.
um, and then your brother recognizing your talents is like, hey, you should try to like pivot a bit and
Yeah.
try these drums over here.
Right.
Like, hey, try this. You'll probably be better at this.
Right. And
Um,
then
uh,
and he was the drummer at the time, and then he ended up playing keys. He's the
oh,
one. He's just like any instrument he picked up. Like I had brothers who played
wow.
only keys or only guitar and bass. But he's just like, oh, all right, I work really hard at it. I'm good at it. He's just one of those cats.
Supernatural. He's like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
easy. I got
yeah,
this.
exactly.
You're like, trying to figure this out.
I get my coordination.
No, I love to hear that. So drums became your first instrument. So
Mhm.
I feel like for a lot of like musicians, like their first instruments becomes a passion, a love,
Mhm.
like something that you just obsess over. So was that the case for you, where you just wanted to like do well at it every day, or what
Yeah,
was that?
yeah.
What was that experience
I
like?
had a competitive edge, man, and a lot of times in Pentecostal church, like it's a lot of musicians, a lot of drummers, and and everybody's like waiting on that turn to like sitting in the corner waiting. So for me, it was not having to be called off because you're like messing up a song or something. So like my drive was like, nah, in a good way, in a friendly way. Like I don't want to get off, and it would just like crush me when like my brother was the one of my brothers was the worship leaders, and he'll look over and be like, and like switch out drummers, or he'd be like, more foot, more power, and just trying to keep up with that energy. So I mean, it really was fun, and it was competitive because you didn't want like to get switched out on the kid.
Right. Yeah. So it was more so fear of getting switched out. You're like, I gotta make sure I
Yeah,
got my
well, it
game
was
on Sunday.
exactly. Well, it was fear and passion because it's like
Fear, passion, yeah.
your passion is what drives you. So you're working hard because you're passionate about staying on being a part of, the worship
Right.
experience. But then there was a competitive edge too, because it's like, man, like who's working harder and like who got the chops,
Right.
so there
Right.
was that too.
Yeah, this especially sibling rivalry. I mean, me and my brother, we've been competing since we were born, so we still compete. Like,
I
who's
love
like the
it.
favorite sibling? Like, yeah, I always
Exactly.
tell my, I always tell him I'm the cuter, more adorable brother. But my parents know it. Um, no, it's super important. So for you, like, as you're drumming and like kind of finding your passion within the
Mhm.
drums and the instrument, how did where was that point where it's like, like you hit your stride and just like, wow, I'm actually better than all my siblings, or like, or was it like, or is
Well,
there, or
it
took a
took a
while?
while. It took a while because, like I said, our group that was like a local thing. We decided we wanted to take it to a professional level, and my sisters decided it wasn't for them. So the brothers kind
Hmm.
of reconfigured and renamed ourselves a little bit, and really wanted to pursue it. But even in that, me being the youngest, I still had to prove that I had the vocal chops to record in the studio. I had the writing
Mm,
chops. So I think because of that, that also really pushed me to strive, just to get their approval, at that point. So, I recall them in the studio and they're like, nah, like you're not singing the parts right. Like you got to sit this one out. Or, the song's not good enough. So it's like, all right, cool, like whatever. And you just keep working because that's the first, you impress them. Then it's like, all right, cool. Maybe I got something. So for me, that was in my bubble, that was the pinnacle of like, all right, you've achieved something, right? So as the group really started picking up professionally, I started working on material. By the time we got to our first official project, which got, majorly distributed, um, I had gotten my skills up to a point where I think I had co-written or written majority of that project. Um,
wow.
and the project did fairly well. One of the singles was like, I think it was on the charts for like 30 weeks on the Christian charts, top 20. So that was the first taste of like this could be something, Um, and once I hit that peak, and then the brothers' interests started, getting a little bit diverse because we started when we was really young. So by the time I got to
Right.
college, I had brothers who had gone on to get doctorates and masters
Hmm.
and law degrees. So everybody was kind of like still trying to do the group thing, but still
Had other
pursuing other
passions.
things. Yeah. which my passion between music, I should say, was fashion.
Mm,
So I really went on this like when I wasn't writing the songs good enough kind of thing. I was like, well, I can draw and I have these creative ideas. So I developed a passion in fashion and wanted to go to fashion school and all this stuff. So I was obsessed with that as well, and kind of came back in college to
mm.
figuring out. So I didn't really figure out, honestly, I wanted to be a producer until I got to college.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I think that's important to note. And just for the audience, what was the group's name?
A7.
A7.
Hmm.
A7. Okay. Dope, dope. Is it because seven was the
So,
siblings, number of siblings?
so it was six brothers, it was five brothers and our god brother. All of our names started with A. So Arcelius,
Ah,
Antonio, Alonzo, Antipas, Andronicus, Alexander. And then seven was the number of completion in the presence of God. So it's like A7.
mm.
And it's a cool chord. So
Okay. I love that. I always like the meaning of names. So that's super dope. I like the fact that you talked about, there was a key tipping point where your sisters decided to pivot, and then you were kind of like participating in more so the writing and the singing.
mhm.
So that I'm sure that really like challenged you and developed your skill sets even more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, you want to be a part of it. It's like, at this point, it was like we had investors, we had, indie labels and stuff coming at the group. We were performing,
Mhm.
on BT, on the big gospel platform. So it's like, man, like to get your song heard, you know, or to get your production heard, like it
Right.
drove you. It drove you. So my brother, Alonzo, and I come back to him, but he was like the producer. That's the guy I was talking about earlier who just played
Mhm.
everything. So he was producing too. And
Oh,
he was
really? Okay.
writing, yeah. So they invested in like a PC computer, had the studio set up in the room. So he was running all the like tech and all that stuff early on. Cakewalk, I think it was the software they were using. And like he was producing, man, like producing, writing, like he was killing. So when he went to college, because at that time I started really writing would bug him to make
Mhm.
tracks to my songs. And then when he went to college, he had gotten this motif keyboard. And I was like, man, I ain't got nobody to make, tracks to my songs. And he was like, I'll show you how to sequence. So
Mm.
this is the same brother who told me I should play drums too, by the way.
Shout out to him, man.
Shout out to him, man. Um, he was like, I'll show you how to sequence in the motif, while I'm in college. You can keep it over the weekends or whatever, or during the week. Um, I was like, all right, cool. And because the school he went to was only like an hour away from home, even though
Mhm.
he lived there. So he let me keep the keyboard, man. I learned how to track in it, sequence in it, and was like, hey, what you think about this? How does this sound? Back and forth. And then I would go, my dad ended up being an adjunct, but he was a retired high school professor in English,
Mm.
high school
Wow.
teacher in English, then became an adjunct professor at the university or the college. My brother went to it. It was a legacy school. We all went to it eventually, but at the
Right.
time, so I would go up with him like around my junior year when my dad was teaching, and we'd go and hang out on campus with my brother and go to the studio and stuff like that. So yeah, so I got a lot of cool exposure.
That's really dope. And I think I always like to kind of figure out like the genesis of a lot of these things. And in your case, you started in music in terms of just like seeing your brothers and sisters
Mm-hmm.
be part of this group. And then you initially didn't come in with a specific
Mm-mm.
talent, but you came in dancing like, all right, I'm gonna be that guy.
Yep.
Um, and then shout out to your brother for like kind of introducing you to the drums,
Yep.
and really giving you that as a platform to really like showcase your musicianship.
Yep.
And then fast forward where you are now releasing a project that's charting. Your sisters aren't necessarily involved, but now you've even like elevated yourself, contributing to the singing. And
Mm-hmm.
then kind of fast forward, like you go to college, now it's like here's like full circle your brother again,
Yeah.
now introducing you to just the production
Yeah.
aspect and becoming like the beginning of this producer career at school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So That's really dope. I always love to hear like those stories. So for you, while you're at school, you talked about before you said that you're interested in fashion. So is that where the name Swagg came from? I'm very curious.
No, I get to
Okay.
that.
Okay.
That
Well,
actually happened in college.
okay.
That's a fun story.
All right. So we're gonna fast forward to that. How did you get Swagg?
All right, so cool. So, I was on campus. A lot of people knew I was. We had a lot of good friends. Again, it was a legacy school. People knew my brother, and then I was on campus a lot my junior high school. So those, freshmen and juniors and sophomores knew who I was by the time I got there. And so anyway, I'm hanging with some people. I got this admirer letter in my school campus box. And this young lady was like, oh, when I see you on campus and, the way you lick your lips and you carry yourself, you're a swagger on campus. And I was like, swagger? Like my granddad used swagger, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so as a running joke, it just kind of started D-Swag amongst the homies and just kind of stuck on campus. So people knew me by my name and by D-Swag or Swag. And when I came to New York, and we'll get more into detail, but when I came to New York and got my first internship, I was telling the guy who I interviewed with, G Flowers, the story. And he thought it was funny too. It was like Swag. And it just kind of just stuck in New York too. It just kind of like never went away. So it has nothing to do with me
Fashion
thinking
at all.
no, or thinking I'm swaggy or cocky. It has it actually was a joke.
Wow. Well, big shout out to that secret admirer.
Yeah.
You know,
I still don't know who
she's
she was.
she's probably like, oh my gosh, he's maintained that name since
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
It
I
just
love
stuck.
that. I love that. So when you were producing during college and kind of learning how to produce,
Mhm.
did you like use that as a producer tag, or is that something, or
Yeah.
did that
So,
connect?
so I usually just go by Swag or D Swag in college. So yeah, so everybody just started calling me that. When I was working with local talent.
Mhm.
So it took on many forms. It's Swag, which is my initials, DAH to D Swag and to just Swag. So
Swag.
so people call me all of it in college.
So the swag, D swag, and then swag.
Yeah,
The
then
evolution of
Swag,
swag.
then Swag Arcelius.
The swag Arcelius. Okay.
Yeah, and
Cool.
now I'm moving into a new phase of Swag. I tell you about that.
Okay. I love that. This is, I mean, that's a whole different conversation. The evolution of swag, the swag, D swag, swag, swagger Celius.
Yeah.
And then
Now, if
yeah.
Swag did it,
Swag. Oh, I did see that.
yeah,
What's happened?
we'll
What's
tap
happened
into
to that
that.
is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
what's happened
yeah.
in that in a second. I love that, and this is all the evolution of your brand, and I love to see it. So you're obviously like learning the production aspect. Just
Mhm.
for the producers that are listening and watching this, like what DAWs or production software did you
Yeah.
start with?
So like I said, in middle school, high school, it was Cakewalk, then the Motif, and then when I got to college, Apple had just bought eMagic, and it was Logic 7. I think it was Logic 7. So the school was using that, replacing Finale, which was a scoring software, and start using Logic because you could not only sequence MIDI, but you could score as well. And the MIDI sequencing was much better than Pro Tools,
Mm.
and the Finale, sounds were just trash. So this was a new software, technology at the time. And so a lot of guys were doing hybrids of mainstream music and classical composition. So that was the software we started using. And I got introduced to it by a classmate. While I was scoring in it, I learned how to score in it. And then one day I was in the computer lab, and the dude was like, because I was still using the Motif, and I saw him sequencing, like making like beats and stuff in it. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And he was an older classman. His name was Zach, and he's like, bro, you can do all kind of crazy stuff in it. And so he took maybe 30 minutes and showed me, like poked around in it. I was like, wow. And I ended up staying in the computer lab to like, I think I missed dinner that night because I was just like poking around in it. And I was like, man, this is incredible. And I instantly got obsessed with Logic. And I still use Logic to this day. But yeah.
I love Logic. I mean, I'm not a producer, but I'm always been a big fan of it. I just love how, pretty straightforward it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love to hear those things. And shout out to your friend who introduced you to.
Yeah, put me on.
Put you on.
Shout out to Zach.
Shout out to Zach from school, older classmate. I love that. So you're tapping into Logic. You're kind of learning the platform, the DAWs. So just on like the inspirational side, like what music are you listening to during this time? And, are there any producers that are inspiring you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. During this time, Timberland all the way, Pharrell for sure, Ryan Leslie. We would watch his YouTube videos. This was when like I think YouTube first like started to get popping.
Yeah, those videos.
Yeah, it had those videos. So we was like obsessed with him. And just like honestly, when I was listening to anything and everything, because in the academic world, we were listening to classical music. I was also taking Latin percussion. So I was listening to a lot of that. I was in jazz combo, so I was listening to a lot of standards. And then my friends and I, we would have, arguments on, Kanye, Lupe fiasco, so whatever was happening in hip hop and R&B at that time as well. So 50 Cents, the anything that was around that time. I think T-Pain started to pop off then. So during that time was 2004, 2005, 6. So it was crazy during that time. A lot of new innovative sounds happening in hip hop and R&B and pop as well. Because during that time it went from like T-Pain, I'm Sprung to Justin Timberlake, Sexy Back, right within that 4-year period of college. So we were just like absorbing and digesting and ingesting, I should say, everything. I think I discovered Taylor Swift at that time. Screen Door, I think that was the name of the song. Or Our Song. Our Song was the name of the song. Our Song.
Okay.
I think that was 2007, I believe. But yeah, so to answer your question, man, so I went to like the majors, like we were just a diverse group of people, people from all walks of life. It was a big melting pot. So we had folk people into folk music, people into Christian contemporary, people into church music, people into R&B, hip hop, gangster. So like we all just kind of like listen to everything.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's also a testament to your production style. I mean, way that you've really approached music where you didn't necessarily cap yourself in terms of the music you listen to, right? I think for you were able to like, you talked about listening to the cultural things that were happening with like hip hop and R&B, but also being a listener and a student of jazz, classical music, listening to your friends from the folk side and all types of stuff, because I think we could say this confidently that we listen to music now where everything is genre bending and all these different sounds kind of mashed up together. So that's really cool that you were able to like really approach music that way. Really dope. So fast forward, you're tapping into Logic. The evolution of Swagg is coming in. You're developing yourself as a producer. Where does that first music opportunity, because you talked about an internship, how does that come to fruition?
Well, before that, that opportunity didn't come to grad school. So I'm still in the rural area somewhat LaGrange, Georgia is where I went to undergrad. There's no real industry. The closest industry is Atlanta.
Gotcha.
So I was still with my brothers during this time, and I think my first taste of, you know, any kind of remote success outside of them was when we had an opportunity. Me and two of my brothers had an opportunity to go to South Korea and teach at Seoul
Mm.
Music Institute for about 4 weeks. This is 2007. And so I was in South Korea for a month, basically. Yeah, that was fun.
Wait, well, hold up. Was this before like the whole like kind of K-pop boom?
Like before
Or
this was right. And I'm getting to that because
okay,
I'm getting to that. This is important.
okay,
This is
okay.
like, this is right when K-pop started to really take off and internationally. So what happened was we taught there to Love American Music. We performed. The guy who was the dean of the school was a young guy. His father owned the Music Institute. And he was like, man, you know, he went to Berkeley and went back to South Korea. So he really loved American music, pop, R&B. And he's like, man, it's this new scene. And they had a few pop groups and stuff that was popping off back then. And he was like, yo, send me some tracks. Let's collaborate. Like, you know, cool. So we were sending back and forth ideas. Then he hit me one day and was like, hey, like the Britney Spears of South Korea wants to use like 3 of your songs. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, man, this is incredible. Like I'm popping. And so me and a writing partner of mine who went to school with me, Shandy Kennedy, did these like 3 demos because they kept the melody. And you can find these songs on YouTube. And you can kind of hear me in the background. I'll see if I can find links out. I'll pop them in the chat.
Who's the artist?
Shu Lee.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we find these songs.
Yeah. I'll send you our YouTube maybe.
Okay.
So you can share that. But yeah, man, we did a record called Sexy Boy, Barber's Daughter, and Red Car, I believe it was called. But yeah,
super dope.
So that was like
super dope.
And this was like she was in a girl group, and this was like her second, I believe, independent or solo project, not independent, solo project. So it was like a really big deal. So that was fun to be a part of that. So that was right before the K-pop boom, the big boom, I'll say, in the US. So just being a part of that was really, really cool. Having 3 records for it. So yeah, I got a little play out. And this was right as I was graduating, like about to graduate undergrad. So I was able to take what I made from the production advances and kind of reinvest in myself and get a laptop and some stuff that, you know, I knew at this point I was going to NYU for grad school. I got into NYU. So I was like, this is cool. So yeah, so this is where the other part of the story picks up.
Wow. And then just before we transition to grad school at NYU, like what was that feeling like because of like getting that production advance and like, you know, being able to like make money from your music? Because that incredible. First check is always like the most memorable. I remember that first check I got, my first sync check from an artist I worked with, and I was like, I'm posting this.
Man, it was so cool. I think the coolest part for me was like to see that you can make money. I mean, hindsight, it wasn't a lot of money, but at that time it was like, man, you can get a few $1,000s for like making tracks. What? Like, this is cool. You know what I mean? And again, putting it in context, you know, I'm a kid from Manchester, Georgia. You know, Atlanta is the biggest thing that's popping off, you know, to us. And I'm not from Atlanta, so that was a whole new world in of itself. So to just have an opportunity to have a record place in South Korea on a pop artist felt, you know, huger than life at the time. So like man, that was like, man, I relished in it. Like it was exciting.
Little did we know.
Little did we know.
You know,
They need to give me a
you
call
know.
now. They got budgets.
Well, you could just be like, "Oh, I worked on this artist. Remember?
Yeah,
I'm back, Grammy Award winning
man,
producer."
what?
Yeah, I love that because I didn't know that. I didn't know that about you. So I think those are like the nuggets I love to like talk about.
Mhm.
Because maybe most people probably thought like your first big placement was with an artist here, but it was
Mhm.
with an artist in South Korea. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
That's really cool. So you get your production advance. You invest in your equipment and gear.
Yeah.
You get an opportunity to go to grad school to NYU.
Yeah.
You're coming from a smaller town outside of Atlanta. What was that
Yeah.
transition like
Well,
into like this big
let
city?
me let me tell you this. Since we're talking about L's too, so so even though I was relishing in that opportunity,
Yeah.
and I had gotten into NYU, gotten this placement. I had to take biology again before I could graduate. So all of this is happening. I'm supposed to be getting ready to graduate. And it's like, nah, like you got to take biology again. And I'm like, oh
You gotta
my
take
God,
biology.
bro, like I'm already in NYU, right? I'm already in grad school. Um, I got a placement on an international major artist.
Mhm.
I got this advance and I got to go summer school before I can even get up out of there. So yeah, that
Mhm.
was a crazy L. That was on me. I didn't study hard enough, man. I was just like, man, all I need is a D and I'm straight. And I just undershot.
Oh, oh man. I think that's important to know too, just because I think it's and sometimes in moments you get so caught up in the W
Yeah,
that you forget the things that are around you that you need to do,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And
So
studying was one of those things because I'm not a biology student by any means. And I
yeah,
dropped the
no,
ball on
for
that.
sure. For sure. Nor am I. uh, nor am I. But up to your point, like you knew that was what was required to get to grad school.
Hmm.
So 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 what happened? I mean, you take the summer class. Did you
Hmm.
have to like take it again at
No,
NYU?
so no, I didn't. So what happened was I didn't have to take it until I think it wasn't offered until, which sucks even more. I think it was the second half of the summer, if my memory serves me correct, because I ended up
Oh
coming to
man.
Connecticut to stay with my brother the first half, and then had to go back. So I only had one chance to get it, you know. I would have had to delay my enrollment at NYU.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of pressure going on during
Wow.
that time.
You, you're like, and I'm sure you're probably just like, how is this happening? I got displacement. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why? What is this like wrenching my wheel? Why is this
Yeah,
happening?
man. Listen, lessons learned. Like you said, you can't lose focus on the small details. And that was something that had to be done to get to the next phase of life. That what I had to set out to do anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, super key. So you're able to like obviously, I'm sure you passed it, or
Yeah.
now you're at
Hmm.
NYU.
Yeah.
Um, what was that transition like? Because you know, I think it's one thing to be like the big guy on campus, but
Right.
now you go to NYU and like
Oh yeah,
you
man.
know,
Listen, first of all, grad school is different energy. It was completely different energy.
yeah,
I wasn't
yeah,
even like really tapped into what was happening with it's a
right.
big school.
It
So
is,
it
yeah.
was about, I think our crew when I first got in, there, like 10 or 12 of us who hung out the first semester like all the time. We were all from different places in the world. And that was really
I love
cool.
that.
Um, so I've always been around an eclectic group of people, which is great for me being, we traveled with the group when we was younger, but being from a
Hmm.
small town, being to be, having that exposure to different cultures and different styles and vibes, like it was really cool for me, my type of personality, which really absorbs things that are interesting and different. So that was really cool. Cats from LA or Brazil or Morocco, Germany.
That
Like
that's
it was cool. It was a super eclectic group of people. So we would go to like the different I think we went to a Moroccan club, then we'd go to somewhere else in New York. Like so I was like getting exposed to like a lot of cool different music and different scenes. So yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Culture shock, but
I,
embraced.
yeah. Well, I think also too though, it was important to know that you had your little tribe of your classmates
Yeah,
to experience it. Like you weren't alone in doing it, right? Because
right.
everyone was kind of in a similar position.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We all were discovering. So it was cool.
That's really dope. Or just for reference, I mean, are any of these classmates like do you still in
Yeah.
contact with them? Are you
Yeah,
collaborate
man.
with them?
Yeah, I do. We don't one of my classmates, he's actually in Ann Arbor Republic now. Um then Justin, wait, you know Justin Davis.
No, I don't. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I thought you knew Justin Davis. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, he was one of my classmates. My good friend from India, he was like a Bollywood star, Jigar. He works for General Motors now. He does like the sound technology or something. So we talk often. So yeah, a few of us still stay in contact. Even if it's been a few years, we'll hit each other up on Facebook and just kind of check in. Everybody's doing, but yeah, man, it's we do, or if someone's getting married or having a kid or something, it's like, oh, so yeah, I still keep in contact roughly with everyone, seeing what's going on. So that's cool.
That's really dope. I think those are really cool moments
Yeah.
that you're never gonna forget,
Nah.
especially because you're experiencing that for the first time.
Hmm.
Um, and did they refer to you as Swag as well,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Dave, Swag. It depends.
Swag, the Swag.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. So now you're NYU. You're with these group of kids. Like,
Hmm.
I'm assuming part of the requirements is like to get an internship.
Yeah.
Um, what was that process like? And
It
then
was it was horrible for me, man. Like for whatever reason, my resume was pretty decent. I got involved in a lot of things with undergrad, what you're told to do, community service. I was
Mhm.
really active in those things. And I could not, my professional stuff with my brothers with the K-pop thing, I could not land an internship through the NYU portal for whatever reason. Like no internship on campus, no internship that, were affiliates with them. Like nothing. Like either I didn't hear from anybody back or I just like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you right now. I was so confused, man. Like I was so frustrated and confused. And at
Crazy.
this point, Craigslist was really popping during
Yeah.
this time. So I was like, you know what, screw it. And mind you, I never been to New York. I've gone through New York, but I've never spent
Mhm.
time in New York for real. So I'm on Craigslist, man, and just like, hacking away looking for internships. And so I drove my car up with my parents. So there were a few places I went to that just looked sketchy as hell. And again, I don't know the
Yeah.
city. So I'm just like, I had to rely on my spidey senses, my sixth sense, and
You're
just be
like,
like, I should not be here right now.
this ain't
So
it.
yeah. So some places I pulled up, I looked and I was like, nah, and just kept it moving. Then I had my god brother wife was from Queens. So she spent she's from New York area. So I would hit her and be like, yo, you know about this street and this street? And she was like, nah, don't go over there. Do da 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 da. So she was just kind of like remotely
she,
telling me areas to stay away from.
she was validating.
Yeah. So I was like, cool. And then that's when I came up on this other internship. And the listing was like very vague. It was like production company, Midtown, management production company, Midtown, looking for, intern. So I hit her and I was like, Midtown is cool, right? And she's like, yeah, Midtown is cool. What's the street? And I gave her the street. She's like, oh, that's close to Madison Square Garden. That's like, you should be okay.
Should be all right.
Relatively, yeah. In the context of okay, like what in New York, whatever that is.
Right.
So I was like, all right, cool. So I went, it was a basement, studio in the basement, met. And so I met this guy, G Flowers. And then he was like, give me the spiel. And he was like, yeah, we're a production management company. The company is MBK. And it wouldn't register to me. I knew I seen it. I knew I heard it, but I couldn't think of where at the time. So I was just like, okay, cool. Yeah. You know how you, yeah, I know I've heard.
Yeah.
He was like, cool. He was like, yeah, we got, artists like blah, 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 blah. And he said Alicia Keys. And I was like, okay, that's why I heard it, right? All right, cool. So I'm still like,
You're like, yeah?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what's up, bro. Yeah. So he was like, this is our production studio where we're developing new artists and, working with new people now. So this is just, incubator place where we've got a little small setup where we could freely develop stuff. I was like, dope. So I didn't hear from him for like a week or two after that. And I was like, dang, like, this sucks. Like, I know the industry is out here, but it's one of those things, right? When New York,
right.
I feel like if you're not tapped in, like it's like an underworld. The industry is an underworld. To me, anyway, I just felt so disconnected. I had no community inside of the music industry. And I was just like,
right.
There is industry here. And this was a crazy point too, because during this time, a lot of creatives was moving to LA too. But I was just like, man, like I know, the major labels out here, like I'm just trying to figure out how to tap in. So one day he hit me and was like, what are you doing? I just got out of class. I'm like eating in the cab. And I'm like, I'm chilling. I just got out of class. It was good. And he was like, our engineer can't show up. So can you come through and hold it down? And it was a Logic production setup. And I was like, yeah, I got you. Now, mind you, I wasn't really an engineer. Like I knew how to press record, but
little did they know.
Little did they know. But I knew enough about the DAW and recording my friends and
right.
like, producing and stuff. But, I wouldn't call myself an engineer. But I was like, I got you, man. You need me, I got you. I'll figure this out. So I had to learn the room, learn everything, like kind of on the fly.
Wow.
And so that was my first internship / gig. After not hearing from
first off, how did that session go? I'm very curious.
Session went pretty good. Now, this is the crazy part about it. It was like 20 people in there because it was the gospel group. So
wow, 20 people.
It was crazy. And it was Alicia Keys' at the time musical director who was producing the session. So talk about no pressure. And Jeff came that night. Like he just happened to come in and he was really quick. But everybody's like, yo, that's Jeff. And I'm just like, okay, who's Jeff? And it's like, nah, he's the guy. He's the big dog. I'm like, oh, okay, crazy. So like that was insane. That was a lot to take in,
Wow. And just for a lesson learned, like, you had this opportunity, you were confident about it. What was something? How'd you hype yourself up, given like that moment? Like, do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was I'm in a city I don't know, and I'm really trying to tap into the industry. And this was my first lead. And I did my research on the company, found out who they were. And I'm like, all right, cool. This could be something really cool. At the time, I had a linear focus of maybe I could work with Alicia.
Right.
But also it's like, you have to prove yourself in these small things. So in my mind, I was like, I want to be the best intern or, whatever this is. I'm going to give it my all, and everything I ever learned Like, this is it. This is my shot to impress. It's like, player go home. So that's, on the train ride, subway ride over there, I was just kind of like, okay, I got this. I got this. I mean, I was a nervous wreck on the inside, but I kept my composure, once I sat down and was like, figuring things out as I went, things I didn't know. It's just like, because most people didn't know I was an intern at the time. They're just like, oh, this engineer, all right, cool. So
just roll with it.
you had to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sure you're confident about it, which is really dope.
Mhm.
And I just remember too, like, this is probably later on, but my first experience at MBK was going to your office, and then y'all had a like showcases. I remember at
Mhm.
the office, it was like unplugged.
Yep, the
And
studio thing. Yeah.
I don't know if it was called Champagne Room. I forgot what it was called. It was like
Our studio, what was it called? Dang, I forgot the name of the unplugged. It had a
it
name,
was like an
right?
event. It was an event.
Yeah,
Like it would
yeah.
like A&Rs would be there, and like just
I
like
can't remember
industry
what
would
they
be there.
named that. Yeah, I can't remember what they named that.
Someone
But
used to
yeah,
curate it. I forgot what it was called.
Anthony
Um
Hall, right?
yes, yes, Anthony.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. So that was really cool. So for you, obviously now, and this is really important to know too, like even though you went to NYU, it didn't necessarily guarantee you an internship. You actually had to go to Craigslist of all places
Yeah.
to find opportunity.
I was beating the street, man. I was like, I'm not defeated. And like I said, a lot of my peers and friends were like getting internships and like Clive studio. And I'm like, God dang it. Like, I'm not catching anything. So I really had to hustle and figure it out.
So basically, I just want to just point out that your first door didn't necessarily open, but I think for a lot of folks that are young professionals or producers or trying to find those entry points,
Hmm.
that don't get discouraged, because usually the first door isn't necessarily the first door that opens.
Right.
So I think the fact that you were resourceful, shout out to your godbrother's girlfriend at the time for like validating,
Wife.
New York City wife,
Yeah.
now, wife now. Just want to plug her. I always like to give credit when credit's due.
For
Uh,
sure. For sure.
uh, and just helping you navigate
Hmm.
New York City, and the fact that you were able to find that situation where he was like, "Hey, you know how to engineer logic? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, got you."
I pressed record before.
Record. So I love to hear those stories, and man, I mean, the people that did not hire you, they're probably like scratching their heads now and like, I remember that. Yeah, that Swagg or Celia's guy.
Exactly. Who's
Yeah,
that kid again?
yeah. Who's that kid again? I love to hear that, because even for me, when I was applying for jobs, it was like applying in a dark hole.
Yeah.
Like people just literally just like a robot would reply, like
Yeah.
you're not accepted, or I'm just
Yeah.
like, what's
What
going
does
on
that
here?
mean?
Yeah, but I think also shows like how music works sometimes, where it's not about that standard kind of typical process of applying for a
Hmm.
job. It's more so these interesting experiences where people just vouch for you, or in this
Yeah.
case, it was Craigslist.
Yeah. Crazy, man. This is right before the Craigslist killer too. So
Yeah, interesting. Well, interesting to note. uh, so as this is happening, what was that like small win for you? Because I think you talked about this in past panels where there's that there's that opportunity
yeah.
to
So
really really
so
really transcends your career.
so essentially what happened was, that session went well. Then I got called back to work with other people that were working with, like Jermaine Paul at the time. And then I had another session with the gospel group and Jeff's brother, Conrad. Um, got there a little bit early ahead of everybody, and we were just talking. And he was asking, a little bit about my background. he just wanted to get to know me. He's like, "You're a cool brother." So we was just chopping it up. And then he was like, I'm looking for a Christian contemporary, like a pop gospel song for my group. Um, you know, I heard you say, you wrote with your brothers, it was a gospel band, whatever, but you wouldn't happen to do anything like that with you. And then he had a smirk on his face. And I was like, actually, I wrote a song for my chapel band in college, and that could be really cool. And he was like, oh, sing it. And I was like, oh, sing it, shoot.
Okay.
And I couldn't remember, I promise you, I couldn't remember those verses that saved my life, but I remembered the hook. So I sang him the hook, and I was like, man, I can't remember the verses, but I can get them to you, by tomorrow. Just hit my chaplain up, because he would keep all the songs. But I sang him the hook, and he's like, oh, this is a really good hook. Like, can you demo it, get the verses, demo it, and sing to me? I hit my chaplain. I hit the chapel band. He kept everything, but for some reason, he could not find this song.
Oh no.
So I'm calling people who were still in school, and was like, yo, can you go to the computer lab and see if my login still work, and see if you can find this song. One of my friends was there. He's like, no. She was like, no, I can't find it. Da, da, da. I'm like, what is going on? I don't know what happened. Like, the song just like, so I just sat in my dorm NYU, rewrote new verses and kept the hook.
Wow.
And I demoed it on the gear that I bought from my K-pop earnings. And to tie it all in.
Wow.
And I came back like the next day after classes and played it for him. And he was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I want to play it for the group. So that was the first time I recorded a record of mine within the company. And the song obviously circulated. The group cut it. It never came out, believe it or not. This particular one never came out. But it circulated in the building. Jeff heard it. Was like, yo, this is really good. Conrad was like, this is great. The group loved it. So he was like, maybe a week or so after that, he's like, write me another one like that. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, dang, I gotta do this. And I was on the 2 train. I lived in Brooklyn at the time on Livingston Street. And I was on the 2 train, and I was just going through some things in life, and just been also thankful for the opportunities that were presenting themselves. So I wrote this song called Me to You. Being always trying to be authentic and never shying away from my background in Christian music and gospel music and my upbringing, and my spiritual core. I felt those were important factors in the person I am and who I was at that time. So I always wanted to be authentically me, no matter what rooms I was in. So, I wrote this song on the train. I had the BlackBerry then. So I was just writing BlackBerry. I was writing these lyrics on the train. I came back, I demoed it, and I got, by the time I wrote that song so fast, man, I promise you, by the time I left the studio on the 2 train, so I got on the 2 train at, if you know anything about New York, that is, what's that, 34th? Right there by Madison Square Garden to Livingston Street. So that's about a 20-minute train ride. So like by the time I got on the train and got to my stop, I completed the lyrics, and I ran up to my dorm and just laid it down and came back the next day and was like, yo, check this out. And he's like, yo, this is beautiful. This is crazy. That song did come out.
Wow. Me to You.
Yeah, Me to You. And yeah, man. So that one circulated. And so then that's when Jeff was like, yo, the gospel kid in the basement is all right. And so they used to make fun of me because I used to wear like blazers and jeans and like, I was on my Kanye. So he was like,
Swagg.
He was like, the kid with the tight jackets on, tell him to keep wearing tight jackets. So at this time I hadn't really met Jeff, but it was just like getting word, like people was like, yo, whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. And so then I just started building a rapport with that project. But I also knew I didn't want to get stuck. I always had a vision of conquering multiple genres because of my exposure to different genres in college and experimenting with undergrad and experimenting with different artists like folk artists and stuff. So I'm like, man, you know, I want to compete at a level where I can top the gospel charts, top the R&B charts, top the hip hop charts, top, you know, and the ultimate goal is to have, still is to have multiple songs in the top 10 at the same time.
I love
And
that.
those different things. So that was my goal. So I was like, man, this is great. I'm enjoying doing this. And I want to do more, but I don't want to get stuck in this box of, because a lot of time people think if you do the genre of gospel, you can't stretch out in other genres. I think it's more accepted for producers outside of gospel to come into gospel and do something because it's like, oh, that's cool versus like gospel has this stigma of, yeah. So I was like, dang, like I'm writing these like, songs that mean something to me for sure, but like I don't want to get stuck here. So an opportunity came. They were signing like different pop artists and stuff and hip hop artists to just, kind of see as the company evolved what they were doing. So I just kind of raised my hand. And then I reached out. I think I met Jeff like a couple of times. Then I hit him on Facebook Messenger. And I'll always remember there's a saying, to be interesting, you have to be interested. So I would hit him up and just like, hey man,
That's
bro.
a great lesson learned.
Yeah. So I was like, hit him up and started building a relationship with him. I don't even know if you remember, but we started really talking on Facebook. And then, I would, because at the time he was still actively traveling with Alicia. This was coming off of As I Am, going into Element of Freedom. So this was like she was like at her peak. Yeah. So he was never in New York. So, I catch him when I caught him. And then they would, bring in different artists and stuff. And I would try to get in with like the artist that was like at the very beginning of development and say, hey, can I get in with this pop artist? And they had this artist now she's like into acting and stuff, but her name was Daisha Graff. And she was doing more like alternative pop music.
Yes, Daisha. Yes.
Yeah.
She was a dancer as well.
Yep.
Yep. I remember Daisha. She used to funny quick story. She used to teach dance class at a school I used to tutor at while I was making side money while I was pursuing my music career. So kind of full circle.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So they brought us like, oh, this is different for us. We want to see what it is. Listen, I'm with it. Like, let's go. And Jeff was like, okay, cool. And ain't no money off, hair off my back, whatever. And like, go for it. So that summer, me and her and our Shalimar, like we just locked ourselves in the basement and just was creating these like really cool records. And then Walter Jones brought in Ursula towards the end of this process. And then we locked in and just started creating a whole bunch of stuff. And, actually L.A. Reid had signed her at one point off of those demos.
Wow.
So, and that was just like, to me, like, all right, cool. Like this is dope. Like that is dope. So that was, starting to get more trust. And then they dabbled in hip hop. I started working with hip hop artists. And it was at one point where I don't even remember when I transitioned from intern. Because at one point, like I kid you not, I was engineering, putting change in meters, going on runs, producing records, writing records. Like I was running, G was running the studio and I was just like his right hand dude. Like I was doing everything right there with him. He would open up to a point where I got a key to the studio. So I don't even remember. It felt like it happened overnight where I went from intern to basically like just staff producing engineer, I guess, at one point. And like I would sit in sessions when I signed L with Alex the Kid before Love the Way You Lie. So I'm sitting there just like watching him work and getting game. And our relationship came full circle because he was like right at that moment. He was about to pivot when I was still interning, right? And I was sitting with him and just like getting game and like how he was working and stuff. And he was like, man, I got this record with Rihanna, because he was living in New York at the time. And he was like,
Oh
but
my
I don't
God.
think it's coming out. He's like, it didn't make her album, so I don't know what they're doing with it. And that ended up being Love the Way You Lie. So
Ooh.
I got to see all of that in real time, bro. Talk about a mind warp, right? It's like you were sitting there with this dude, and then like 6 months later or whatever, like he's one of the biggest producers in the world. Insane.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about like being in sessions where you just never know where that song can go.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you another crazy story. And this is gonna mess you up too. So during this time, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. They signed a young artist who's still developing in the wings, who the world knows her now. And she's like 12. And so we were going to Jungle. We did some sessions in Jungle, and a young intern came up to me because, I'm in a session at Jungle and he's interning at Jungle. And he's like, can I play some tracks for you at the end of my session? I was like, yeah, bro. And we started chopping it up. He's like, yeah, I go to NYU. And I was like, oh, dope. I went to NYU, whatever. And I was like, man, come by. At the time we were about to start building Oz. So I was like, man, we're working on a studio now. Whenever it's up, like take my number, we'll come up whenever, da. So he would come around. I built a relationship with him. And he is now Denzel of Day Trip.
Wow. Crazy. Day Trip. And for those who don't know, it's that producer duo.
Yeah.
Producing
Day Trip take
records.
it to 10. Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas X.
Who else they're on? Everybody. Cudi, Kid Cudi. They're on everybody. Danny Lee, last single with the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
They're hot.
Huge. And I think that's a huge lesson learned too. Doesn't matter what position you are in your career. It's even the people that like, for example, the person that gave you a chance, right? You paid it forward by giving him a chance to play his music, and you didn't discredit him even though he was an intern.
No. And I was like, you're dope, man. And he even came by and was like doing some stuff with Daisha at the time. And like it's crazy. And then I look up and I was like, whatever happened, And then I seen him. I saw him, Songwriters Hall of Fame or something. And I was like, man, what's going on with you? He's like, man, making some records with my partner, bro. Like, got some stuff coming up, like really cool. I was like, that's dope, bro. I was like, take my number again. We had lost contact. And like literally, man, like next year or so, it's like out of here. So shout out to those guys.
Yeah, shout out to Day Trip, and it just comes full circle. So I just want to point that out again. Just doesn't matter as you progress in your career, give people opportunity just because a lot of folks didn't start there, and pay it forward. By giving them a chance, you never know where those people are going to be in a couple of years.
Absolutely.
So I want to mention that. So a lot of interesting gems here. So you talked about working with Daisha. I remember that showcase that you guys did. I think it was at it was downtown by the Meatpacking District.
Yeah.
I remember there was a showcase that you guys did, I think 2011 or 2010, I'm not sure. But I remember Daisha performing. That was really a really cool experience. But you talked about her. I also remember before her Gabby, I remember her performing as well during that. And I remember, I believe there was another artist that had won The Voice, I believe.
Jermaine
Paul. He was, I think, the headliner of the event. It was a Hammerstein? No, it was a Hammerstein. Is it?
What's that?
Highline Ballroom.
Yeah.
Highline Ballroom. Yeah, I was there.
I was playing. I think Elle performed too. No, I
Elle
think Elle
performed. Yeah,
performed.
she
Yeah,
performed.
because was that the one Latoya Luckett hosted?
Yes, Latoya Luckett.
So I was playing.
Wow.
I was gigging. So full circle. So the brother who put me on at a young age, and of course he was, he had gone on to be a professor in music and still was musical directing and arranging for other people. I was like, yo, man, it's a dope, dope opportunity here. Like I want to bring you in because I was looking for an MD for that show. And we had just finished doing something for the Apollo. And I was like, G had hit me saying, man, I need an MD for this. I got this, the budget, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yo, Zoe, like, I need you to pull a band together. So he ended up MDing that whole thing. And
Wow.
and now he's her MD.
Really
Yeah.
crazy.
So he paid,
Crazy.
he put me on, and like we ended up just kind of like working together. Um, but
Wow.
yeah, so I was drumming. I was playing for L at the time. Yeah.
Wow. Full circle moments here. First of all, your brother that put you on to your drums. Now you're drumming
Yeah.
at this event, and now he's MDing it. So,
Yeah.
crazy to think about it. I love to kind of see those full circle moments because I feel like the details leading into it kind of add up, and
Yeah.
then like here we are.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that were behind that led into it. So
Yeah.
I love to hear that. So for you, like, obviously, like, fast forward, I want to just kind of just tap into, obviously, kind of a transcendent moment for you, with her. Like,
Hmm.
talk about that process, because I think at the time she was going through a transition from a brand standpoint,
Yeah.
um, kind of working on that project, and
Yeah.
one,
So
and then two, about the reaction of, like, the world reacting to the music.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you two stories inside of this story. Um, so again, I met her when she was about 12, I believe. And brought her to the basement, was like, let's just record her, see what it is, see what she got. She had written a song. I sat with her, kind of rearranged it a little bit with her. We did it. And it's like, oh, this is cool. I was trying to figure things out. And then preparing, I believe it was that showcase. Peter Edge and I forgot who else came to showcase that. I think it was to CL or whatever. And G was preparing, and she sang "If I Were a Boy," Beyonce, at like 13 or something. And like, man, it was like, whoa, it was one of those
Remember that.
moments. And Peter was like, yo, Jeff, is she signed? Like, what's going on here? And then Jeff was like, oh, we could talk. That's all I remember. They got up and walked out. So that was my first time. So, you see that stuff in movies, like, oh,
Right.
so I'm just like,
Something's happening here.
yeah, this is cool. um, so, in the beginning, I was working with her, and then they're just trying to, get her legs under her. And then when she became a teenager, early teen, that's when they started, doing trips to LA and different places, just trying to figure out what the sound would be. And nothing was really clicking because you had someone who was like 13, 14, but musically was so advanced. It's like, how do you create something that really resonates with her demographic, but still retain substance, and during this time, music was very cookie cutter, and R&B had kind of like taken the underground, um, you know,
Back seat.
yeah, yeah, in the shadows of the music industry bastard. Um, which was funny
Yeah.
because I felt like a lot of the pop records were R&B, but that's another conversation for another day. Um,
Yeah,
but so I was trying to figure it out, and I was just there, still there and just working, and she and I had developed a really close bond. And I was really trying to like crack the code, and I was getting frustrated because it's like, why, you know, bringing in, I mean, everybody at the time. And I was like, man, I just really want an opportunity. And Suzette Williams, I went to her office. And for those who don't know, she's a legend. She was part of the Lauryn Hill Miss Education album. She managed Lauryn Hill, ran Sony Music, publishing on the urban side, worked with the Fugees for years, Carlos Santana. So she was Jeff's business partner at the time at NBK. And I went to her office just like frustrated with the whole process. And she was just like, yo, you know, she was like, I feel like you're the one gonna crack the code because your motives were different. She's like, don't give up. Like, just, you know, when you get your opportunities, just seize your opportunities. She's like, don't give up yet. And I'm like, all right, cool, man, like whatever. So I finally got an opportunity in New York to just have like a writing session with her. And we wrote this record that never came out, and it changed everything. Like Peter went crazy over it, Jeff went crazy over it. Everybody's like, yo, this is crazy. And then I became like that guy who was with her all the time. Like whenever she went to LA, I was in the writing rooms, whenever, you know. And that was a great opportunity for me because I got to sit in some of those rooms and see how other writers and producers were working. You know, I saw what I was doing good. I saw what I wasn't doing good. So for me, that was a learning experience for me, to just kind of be a part of that. So when and I'm kind of running through the story a little bit, but during all this process, she told me, she was like, yo, you know, I got this friend. Let me back up. During this process, she was working with Babyface, and Nick Cannon's big business partner, who I didn't know was his business partner, was sitting in the lobby, and we started talking and just chopping it up. And he was like, man, yeah, take my number, man, you know. And at the end of the conversation, he was like, next time I'm in New York, I want you to meet Nick. Next time we're in New York, I want you to meet Nick Cannon. It's like my business partner or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. All right, cool. So, you know, and then going back, her was like, yeah, I got a friend from the Bay who's dope too. Like, I think y'all should work. Like, she's just so dope. I don't know how y'all would work, but this is so dope. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, you know, put me on to her. And so she introduced me to her, I believe it was Twitter or something. And it was Kaylani. And so I was like, man, you dope, blah, blah. And
crazy.
And she was like, yeah, that's dope. So then I met Nick. Then Nick was like at a charity event in New York, and we ended up exchanging numbers. And he's like, I got a project that I'd love to get you involved with. And I didn't know it was Kaylani because G had already introduced me to Kaylani. And so I was like, yeah, man, cool. So he's like, I bet. It didn't work out. And Kaylani hit me. He was like, yo, I'm gonna hit Nick and see, you know, how we can make it work. I was like, oh, Nick? I was like, all right, cool. Let's set up a call with him. And so let's just do it right. So Nick called me. He's like, yo, this is a project I want you to jump on anyway. So I tell you what, I fly out to New York and, you know, get in the studio and see what y'all come up with. And I was like, bet. So while we were still figuring out her project, she introduced me to Kaylani. And then another interesting person is gonna come into this story, which is really cool. There's this young kid who my brother introduced me to, who was at Berkeley's 5-week program, and he was going to Juilliard, and he really wanted to be a producer. So my brother was like, "Oh, he in New York." And my brother, you know, he's doing a lot of stuff with MBK, whatever. Maybe you can kick it with him, whatever. So it's Jahan Sweet. And Jahan was a student at Berkeley. I mean, his credits are crazy right now. But he would come to the studio all the time between classes and like say, yo, can I stay in the studio over the weekend? Like I won't get into nothing. I won't blah, blah, blah. So we'll let him work in the B room over the weekend. Like he would literally sleep in the studio. So during this time, I think I've been working with Jahan. He was around for about about a year at this point, or almost a year, when I started working with Kaylani. And so he
Uh-huh.
heard the first song we was working on, and he's like, "Man, she's so killing." And I was like, "Yeah, bro, like I got to figure out a way to get you in on this." So he had played me this track that he had been working on early in the summer, and I was like, "Yo, you should loop this back part of it and rework it, blah blah." So I was going to the restroom, um, and I heard him working on the track, and I'm like, "Yo, bro, this would be dope for the vibe that I'm trying to take her in. Like, can you send me the track?" He's like, "Yeah, I got you." He sent me the track. We sat in the A room and wrote it and vocal produced her and all that stuff. Then by the end of the week, we had like the first 4 songs of Cloud 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. Wow.
Yes.
But I feel like those are the things that you just can't plan for, right? Um,
No.
it's, I think, one, just the good energy that you put out,
Yeah.
having that experience working with her, and then
Yeah.
obviously now you're with Kalani, and I remember that project.
Yeah.
That really got me interested in her music, because I'm an R&B head as well. So
Yeah.
the fact that and then the fact that that also shows too the magic of a session where you can literally just be like going to the bathroom and then it's like,
Yeah.
wait, hold up.
Yeah. What's that? Because see what
Let me go
happened,
back to that.
man, we would have these intense conversations too about music, where it was going, and our
Mhm.
vision for it. And for me, like we will always have these conversations about like reintroducing that style of R&B that Timberland tapped into with Aaliyah, where it was like this hard hitting hip hop,
Mhm.
over this sweet melody. And I was like, what if we tap into this nostalgia 90s, but with like, current wave drums, with people really singing, on top of it.
Mm.
And Kehlani was just like the perfect candidate for that because she loves 90s R&B. She had that tone, and like my sound was very aggressive and Atlanta, Miami bass driven because I'm from the South. But
Right.
then I'd been in New York for so long, so I had a certain grit to it. So she just was like, well, her bass swag, it just like was the perfect gumbo.
Like,
And yeah, and because John is from the South too, and we just would have these conversations about production and stuff. So naturally, his sound started to migrate in that way as well. So it just ended up really coming together really, really, really coolly. Really coolly, that's not a word. Really cool.
not a word yet.
Not a word yet.
If
Uh,
Swag did it, then it
there
can
it
be.
is. There it is. So during that process, we're still trying to figure out the her thing. And she went home. So I think Cloud 19 came out. Yeah, it did. Because I think Cloud 19 came out 2014.
Yeah, I
2014.
remember.
Yeah,
2014.
2014. And the single was Fuck With You. And it started going crazy online.
Yes.
Started going
Hmm.
crazy online. And I think that
YouTube.
was my
Yeah.
first time, yeah, experiencing anything going like viral musically. Like it was trending on Twitter. Like it was insane. New York radio stations was playing it for whatever. Was it not Ebro?
Was it Hot 97?
Yes, yes, yes. I think Paul Rosenberg. He started spinning the record, and then labels started hitting me because I guess they thought I was more involved than I was. So like Epic had hit me, and like APG reached out to me. She ended up signing with them, but I wasn't her manager or anything. But that's when I realized, like, man, okay, cool. Like I could really develop a project, right? And
Mhm.
then still very much working with the her thing, trying to figure that out with everybody. And then Kim Michelle came around, and I did demos with her. They got her deal at Atlantic.
Wow.
Um, and so by this point, G was still in the still working. And one day Jeff hit me and was just like, "Hey man, like I want you to, um, I got a few, fires going, and I want you to help me do this project so we could just get something out. Like, you know, I gotta get something out. And he's like, can you help me executive produce this? And I was like, yep. And so
Count me in.
I'm in. And so from that point, now she's you know, at high school and stuff, you know, young lady going through different transitions, and we would have real conversations about life and different things she was going through. And that's when we started to rebrand. It started with the music, with the conversation, with the story. The rebrand started with the honesty of the story. And me just kind of being that big brother figure, you know, around in the studio, hearing, you know, all the stories, all the, you know, the good times, the bad times. We were able to connect on a different level musically. And so she hit me right before, because she was in school and she would be in New York all the time. And so I think it was winter break. I can't remember, it was one of those winter breaks or something, one of those weird school breaks. And she hit me, and Drake's Jungle had come out. And she was like, man, we should cover this. And I'm like, yeah, we should. And I reproduced the entire track, resampled every part is like I remade every single part. It's not an instrumental. And she did it. And then we played it for Jeff. He was like, yo, this is crazy. This is crazy, you know? And so then that was the start of that whole volume 1 kind of vibe. And he was like, yo, let's stretch it out. So then she went back home again, and she came back and she wrote Losing. So she wrote Losing at home on the piano. She came back to the studio. She was like, yeah, I wrote this song. And she played me for me on the keyboard. Wow. And so while she was away, we were trying to figure out other producers and writers she can get in with. And we did some sessions early on with DJ Camper. And I was like, yo, we should bring back Camper. It'd be a dope addition, not a dope addition to, you know, the vibe or whatever. And, you know, she really connected with him. So Jeff was like, all right, cool, yeah. We'll reach out. So that night she played me Losing. She was like, yo, I want to work on this song with you. Let me see what you think. So he was coming that night. So she played it for me on the piano, and we worked out a few parts. I had to repeat. I can't remember, it was a few structural things I suggested she change. She was like, dope, I can't wait to work on this. And I was like, you got a session with Camper tonight. Why don't y'all just do it tonight? The song is dope. Like, just see what he come up with. And I went home and I came back and it was Losing. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that was like another one that kind of happened. And then Her was a record. I did Jeff Giddy this song never came out. Jeff Giddy sent me this idea, and then we produced it out and wrote this song called Her to it.
Oh, wow.
And that's where the moniker came from.
Ah.
Yeah.
Crazy. So Her was inspired by the song that never came out.
Yep. Because we was kicking around project ideas, and like it was like the concept was The Other Girl Next Door. That was the original concept. And so the song Her was basically talking about how she wished she was her, the girl. Like she was like, I'm doing in the song, I think if my memory serves me correct, the narrative was like, I'm doing everything right, like, you know, but you giving all of your attention to her. I wish I was her. So that's where the original concept of Her came from. It was like, well, we should just name the project Her, like, and we can insert I am her, you know, anybody can be her, you know, it's more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little did y'all know that would just move like millions of, obviously, like people, but women.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And that's what we was
girls.
like. And that's what the whole concept was like. You know, the conversations we would have would be, this is your diary that you choose to share. So, my thing was I was very encouraging to her to like really just tap into that honesty and not be afraid to be emotionally bare. Um, and that's what she did, man. She really went there. And, everybody really encouraged and supported her from Jeff on down when he, would start hearing the records and started, making suggestions about changing certain things and really mining out the gold. And like we had recorded so much at this time. And like him coming in and mining out
Right.
like the nuggets and just like, all right, cool, this is dope, this is dope, this is dope, this is cool, this could be changed, this could be that. And then they took the project concept, to the label, and they loved it, and the moniker was born. And then the acronym came because there was like, what does that mean? Like, what is that? And she and I were talking about like how emotionally raw and available she was during the process, and then we came up with having everything revealed.
Wow. Full circle moment, kapow
Yeah.
moment. If Swagg did it,
It's
man,
progressive.
It's progressive. I love it. I just have to stop for a moment because I feel like those are like the nuggets that I enjoy just as a fan. And just kind of hearing your story about how, her development as an artist, where the musicianship was so advanced, but her experiences didn't necessarily match that. So I think it was really a timing thing.
Yeah.
Right. So she could speak on those
Yeah.
experiences.
And really having a team, like, Jeff being as patient as he is and dedicated to the concept of artist development, of him saying like, that's okay. I think that was important too. The people that was around her during that process and not getting frustrated with the process. Cause you know how this game is. It's like, oh, we ain't got it yet. Jeff really held the label at bay until he felt she was in a position to deliver what she needed to deliver. So, a lot of credit to him as well for really,
Right.
spearheading, being the general that really was like, no, like we're going to get it right. Like, I'm not going to feed her to the wolves until, we have something that is as special as she is. So, yeah, I think, like you said, it's a timing thing and just the audacity for someone to be like, yeah, nah, you're gonna wait for the specialness to really shine through in the best way possible.
Yeah. And shout out to Jeff Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
being like the, obviously the brains behind MBK. And also just more so just, you said a collective team effort with the patience of
Mm-hmm.
waiting and kind of find those moments. But I love to hear that, obviously her becoming a transcendent moment for you and her as well. What was, we fast forward to what you're doing now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, now you're a Grammy award winning producer, you're
Mm-hmm.
an educator, you're an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the things that you're excited about, in terms of what you're working on, because you've had such an amazing journey. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I want to like just quickly just recap what you did. So you obviously, you started in a Christian group with your
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
right? You're the guy that didn't necessarily know how to sing or dance. I mean, sing
Right.
or play an instrument, but you know how to dance.
Right.
Um, you talked about, your passion for creative writing and poetry,
Mm-hmm.
and your brother, who we need to credit for a couple things, convinced you to play the drums.
Yep.
So you play the drums and you become the guy that plays the drums for your group.
Yep.
7.
Yep.
And then, as you're playing in church, you develop, a sound where like your group becomes, a traveling group, or you
Mm-hmm.
become known, and you
Mm-hmm.
got a situation where you put a record out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And during this time, you mentioned that your sisters transitioned from their roles in the group. Now it's just
Yep.
the brothers,
Yep.
and then you develop your kind of your voice, and your kind of like contribution as a singer and a writer
Mm-hmm.
and a composer,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So really important moment, because as you're doing this and you're traveling, mind you, you know you go to your local college, like where your dad is, you said, an adjunct professor,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um and then you become the guy, right, with your brothers, because you you know, this is where the name Swagg is born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does Swagg, does uh D
D
Swagg,
swag.
Swagg Arcelius.
Yeah.
um and this is where you learn to produce, right? You
Mm-hmm.
talk about your brother really teaching you, you know, the sweet sequence, and you
Yeah.
know, being able to like introduce you to that. And then also shout out to your older classmen, your upperclassmen, for
Yeah.
introducing you to Logic.
Yep.
uh so you start tapping in Logic,
Yeah.
getting into that, the music producer, you get your tag name. These are
Yep.
all things that are bubbling.
Yeah.
um right before, you know, you I think you mentioned, you know, you this is like towards the end of your grad school, your undergrad.
Undergrad.
You go to Korea,
Yeah.
right? You have an opportunity to go to Korea, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and you are able to stay there for a month and do these songs, these 3 demos for this, what, the Britney Spears of South Korea.
Yeah. At the
um
time. Yeah.
and, and this is right before, just for context for the community, right
Mm-hmm.
before K-pop really just like
Like
went
super
to the
exploded.
stratosphere.
Right.
So full circle moment. You come back, you get this production advance, you buy equipment, you have an opportunity to go to NYU. You
Yeah.
go through a lesson learned moment, and then uh you gotta take biology during
Yep.
the summer.
Yep.
Lessons learned. Make sure to pay attention to your classes. um you know, you don't get caught up on all the W's.
Right.
So, but you know, you make it to New York, right? And then what's really interesting is that you were able to kind of find this tribe of all these like music creatives from different
Mm-hmm.
walks of life,
Mm-hmm.
and then you guys experience the grad school in New York City together.
Yep.
um and some of the folks that you still like obviously work with and talk to today,
Yeah.
so shout out to them
Yeah.
once they're watching this. So fast forward, you're like, what the heck, you know, you try and find an internship. You're NYU portal ain't it. um
Yep.
so you resort to Craigslist of all places.
Of all
uh
places.
and then you're tapping in, trying to go to these sketchy places, and then your godbrother's wife,
Yep. Wife. Yeah.
who's from Queens, represent
Yep.
Queens, get the money, you know. uh it's just like validating where you're going. You're like,
Yeah.
not that place.
Yep. Yep.
They're like, 30th Street, all right, cool.
Yep. Yep.
um and then you talk about you know, that opportunity where, you know, you get you go to the interview, and you know, for a week you don't hear, but it was you said, I think Alicia Keys is band or musical director,
Musical director at the time. Yeah.
right? And then you're
Shout out to Andre Gill.
shout out to him. Shout out to him. But that's a really cool moment, because you really just were confident. You didn't know what you were doing at the time, but you were
No.
you're confident, and you made it happen. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And then kind of fast forward, I mean, talking about just like kind of adding value and creating a position for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually getting the keys to the studio, right? And then fast forward, and you know, obviously investing in developing artists like her, and obviously you talked about the opportunity to work with Kalani,
Mm-hmm.
and then just really taking the patience to build that sound. And now fast forward, here we are, 2021. I mean, Grammy award winning producer,
Mm-hmm.
educator, entrepreneur, owner, just straight up motivator. If Swagg did it,
Hey man, listen. That's the goal. That's the
you
goal.
better know.
Better know.
But I just want to sum that up.
Yeah.
Because I was paying attention.
Nah, you got it, man. You was in there.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've been talking for a minute, but like I wanted to make sure like those were highlighted, and I think every piece of the journey contributed to your success and
Sure.
to where you are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, and with that being said, I think all of those experiences gave me the confidence to start progressive music, seeing, the seeds that were planted with Kaylani, being a pivotal, um, staple in the beginning of her career, and seeing where she is now, seeing, the parts that I played in her branding and sound and what she's doing now, being part of the K Michelle's, thing and what she's doing. It gave me the confidence in saying, okay, cool, maybe I have something to offer more. And I've always been the person who never wanted to feel stagnant, and always wanted to challenge myself, and always wanted to kind of move the needle. I have a saying now with my crew where we like, we know where the envelope is so we can push it. So always kind of like having my pulse on culture, or knowing where it is, or surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me, who knows what's going on, and collectively our goal is to push and create the new wave. So that's what progressive music is, man. Really just, trying to find artists that are a little bit different, projects we can get involved in, whether consulting, producing, developing, and really just like, just pushing culture. I feel like I've always been a part of something that moved the needle in culture. But often the ghost in the room, but but it's just like, man, like that really moved, culture. And like you start seeing people and hearing people being inspired by things you were part of, whether it's production, whether it's, where R&B is, and just being like a small little piece of that is very encouraging to me, as I pivot to more executive roles, and, hoping to find artists and work with artists to continue that, make that part of my legacy. And that's why I got into education when the opportunity came. It's like, to provide and be a conduit to the industry that I never had, that professor who is
Right.
actively making records that matter, or being part of projects that are active in the moment, or matter in the moment.
Culture.
And then, so that's why I got into education when the opportunity came, is to really just like tap into like, a newer generation of culture movers, creatives. And it's like, hey, I want to be a part of that too. I want to, help any way I can, be a conduit to help them, get their dreams off or whatever. So that's my main motivation into really, being a professor at these type schools, while still developing artists and being, putting out projects and partnering with major labels and so forth, and getting involved in tech and technology and music software. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, I'm not, I'm just gonna say it here, man. I mean, you're a big and one of the main drivers of like really the resurgence of R&B.
Oh wow! Thank you.
6 to 5 years.
Sheesh.
Like,
that's a lot, man.
I'm saying that just as a fan of music.
Oh wow! Thank you.
All I know is that every R&B artist I follow, you follow. So, so every time you follow artists, I'm like, okay, I'm following her or him. So if Swagg did it, I'm doing it.
Hey man, listen, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of music. So even if I don't work with you, if I'm digging what you're doing, yeah, say, oh, you go, you dope.
No, I think that's also a testament about your character, because outside of all the different things you're doing, at the core of it, you're still a fan of music.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
um, I also don't want to lose that, just because, it's easy to get caught up in like the marketing and just kind of like the
Yeah.
business of music.
Yeah.
So for me, I find therapy just to listen to music without no strings attached.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun that way. You can't lose that, man. Even with projects like I'm working with this guy, I signed this guy, Leo the Kind, and we were working on a new project, and
Yeah.
just like to see his evolution, and like he's self-contained as well. He writes and produce and everything, engineer himself, but we'll come in, do production with him and stuff like that. And I'm genuinely like a fan. Like I'm like, obviously I have to listen very objectively and be like, all right, change this, do that. But like I'm just
Mhm.
amazed at his work ethic and how bad he wants it. And I got to send you a link to the new project, by the way. Uh,
Please,
it's coming
please.
out. New
And just
tape coming out.
for the audience, just can you plug him again? I want to make
Yes.
sure like we have all his information on
Yep.
our bot in our description.
Leo the Kind,
You know, the kind.
Thekind, and it's on all social media platforms the same. We dropped a mixtape called The Ugly during the
Yes.
pandemic. Then we dropped a single called Ain't Nobody Gonna Judge, and we're about to drop another mixtape project top of this year. Um, yeah, the vocals are in, so we're just mixing it. I'm gonna
Send
text it
send
to you. I'm gonna text it to you now, Drew.
send it to me. Send it over. Sorry guys, I'm getting a sneak preview, but
Yeah, watermark,
y'all get
watermark.
y'all be able to listen to us very soon.
Very soon.
Um,
When does this come
uh,
out? It might be out.
I mean, this might be out. Well, we're aiming actually for Q2, so this is gonna be towards March.
Oh yeah,
Um,
this will be out.
oh, this will be out then. Well, then again, you'll probably listen to it. Well, obviously, this is predated. um, no, I think for me, like, this is one of my favorite interviews. I loved it because, one, I've always had respect to you, not only as just a person in music, but as just a human being. So,
Thank you.
appreciate you for that. Um, as we wrap up, this is so many like gems and lessons learned. What's one like L that you want to kind of like pick, just kind of like offer to the community as we wrap up this episode?
I would say really, man, like don't be blinded by ambition, right? I've found myself in scenarios
Mm,
where I've wanted things so bad, or I've only and I recently heard Pharrell talk about this, where you're so zoomed in that you're not really cherishing and listening to the relationships that are around you. So there are a few relationships that not because neither party did anything just like unforgivable to each other. It's just that everybody was so zoomed in, and I have to take responsibility of being so zoomed in that I didn't listen to the other person and how they felt about certain situations, and didn't nurture those relationships. That I've come back and had to heal those wounds and just be like, hey, listen, nah, I see you. I didn't address that, and it's helped me move a little bit differently in how I conduct business and how I deal with artists and how I deal with creatives who I respect. Just really try to zoom out and not be blinded by ambition, that you kind of forget about the humanity of it all, right? So I would say that, man, like even in
that's
your
huge.
drive, yeah, and it's so real because you just never know. Like I have those stories where like, yeah, like man, I've listened to the intern, but then I have those stories where it's like once I'm in situations, I'm so focused on this, it's like, nah, man, you're wrong. Like you gotta, instead of really hearing. So I had to learn not to listen to respond, so much as well. So I
Mm,
feel like on your journey to wherever you're going, no matter what level you are in the game, to never listen to respond. Listen, just listen and to hear, and then figure out, what's the meat and what's the bone. And so those are two lessons learned. Learn to listen and eat the meat, spit out the bone, and don't be so zoomed in that you're blinded by ambition.
Man, I mean, that's something I gotta practice diligently.
It's hard. It's
You
so
know,
hard.
make sure that you're not blinded by ambition,
Yeah.
and then learn to listen, which is super huge. But if Swagg did it,
Yes. That's
I
the 20.
appreciate you, brother. I mean, I
That's the
love the evolution.
2021. That's the 2021. If Swag did it, it's progressive.
If
Um,
Swagg did it,
New brand
it's
alert.
progressive.
New tag alert.
New brand alert. New tag alert. Make sure to follow Swagg did it.
Yeah.
We're gonna make sure his socials are in the description.
Yep.
Can't thank you enough for being part of episode 25, season
Thank
2 of
you.
the L's, aka Lessons Learned.
Thank you for always thinking
one
of
of my
me,
favorite
bro.
episodes so far.
Thank you for always thinking of me and
super
inviting me to be a
excited.
part, sharing your platform. Thank you.
Definitely, and make sure to support his artist, The Other Kind. We're gonna make sure his info is also in the description as well once this is out. But shout out to the Digital Art community. Y'all always support.
Yeah.
You guys have been with us 2016, and can't wait to launch this episode. So stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. And we out.
We out.